All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about what ERROL Spence Jr. Trainer Derrick James had to say about the prospect of Terence Crawford fighting ERROL Spence Jr. this year, and what the biggest problem with making the fight is. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to be again in the 147-pound division, where Derrick James, the 2022 Trainer of the Year, gave a great interview to Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast. Just aired on Showtime Sports YouTube page. Definitely check it out, where he answered questions about what took place, or what the likelihood of the ERROL Spence Jr. Terence Crawford fight taking place this year would be, and also what he thinks the biggest hurdle is. And in my opinion, it's pretty enlightening. Now, I've seen this before, but very interesting to hear it from his perspective. Before I get into that, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are subscribed to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button. If you are a longtime subscriber and supporter like my guy SO504 out of New Orleans, thank you, brother, for coming to the live stream and chatting with me on the live stream. Great conversation for sure. And thank you and everybody else that supports in the super chats and the cash apps of the live stream and in the super thanks of videos like this, which is really how, channels like this are able to continue to put out the content. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into it. Derrick James gave an interview to Brian Custer on the Last Stand podcast. It was just aired on Showtime Boxing. Very, very wide-ranging interview. Said a lot of stuff that was very interesting. In this particular one, I'm going to talk about, the elephant in the room, which is, he was asked, do you see the fight happening with ERROL Spence and Terence Crawford this year, next year in 2023? And if not, what does he think the hurdle is to the fight? Excuse me. And he gave a very clear and reasonable answer. He said he doesn't know whether or not the fight is going to happen, but that some things have taken place that that would prevent the fight or hurdles into the fight. And the first thing that he said was, and I hope this doesn't sound too harsh, but it's the words that he used. He was like, Terence Crawford is very educated about what goes in the ring, but he's not educated about what's going on outside the ring. And he quoted Fat Joe and said, like Fat Joe says, yesterday's prices are not today's prices, and talked about the pay-per-view that took place on BLK Prime between Terence Crawford and David Avanesyan, and said, look, he had heard numbers. He can't verify the numbers, but things had been sent where he'd heard, 15,000, pay-per-views. And he was like, look, that causes a bit of a problem for the fight, because, you had made some assumptions about what your value was, but then when opinion is over with and now you're into facts, you see what you're really worth. So he said, look, when Terence Crawford was behind the machine of Bob Arum and ESPN, he did a certain amount of numbers behind that machine. I know what the numbers were, at least the numbers that are out there, of 135,000 pay-per-views with Sean Porter, 130,000 pay-per-views with Amir Khan, and 50,000 pay-per-views sales against Victor Postol when he fought for the unified titles at 140 pounds. But then he said, now that you're out there by yourself, you wind up being, doing 15,000 pay-per-views or what have you. So now what your worth, really is. He also talked about, the promotions associated with the BLK Prime deal. And he said, look, you won because you made a amount of money, but everybody else lost, because people are not going into, fights, investing multi-millions of dollars to try to lose money, right? So using that BLK Prime, example, he says, look, that is going to be, that's just going to be a little bit, of a tougher scenario, because, what you may have been offered before is not what you're going to get offered going into the next Errol Spence Jr. fight. All right. And I think that is, pretty, valid, a valid point of view. And, when he said as far as, what was, Errol Spence Jr. and he was asked, how does Errol Spence Jr. feel about it? He's like, look, man, Errol isn't somebody that really likes to show a lot of, emotion, but, that he was looking forward to the fight. And that may have been a little bit of a disappointment, but, in life, you don't always get, everything that you're looking for. Sometimes you're looking to get fights done and they don't take place, or you're looking for, to achieve certain goals and you don't achieve them, and it is what it is. You just got to kind of take it as it comes, accept it, and move on. Right. So, he didn't sound as if he had, a lot of faith in the fight happening. Wasn't, in 2023, wasn't completely discounting it. But, doesn't sound to me as if he had, a lot of faith, a lot of faith in it taking place. Now, he also did explain some things or share his opinion about, why the fight in the first place didn't happen, or at least, rejecting some reasons that people assume were behind them. And he said, look, man, it's not the PBC. He said, I don't believe that the PBC is the reason the fight didn't happen. If you look at, the fights that took place between Bob Arum and Top Rank and Deontay Wilder, those fights were able to, take place. And those guys, cooperated on those fights 2 times, right? There was 3 fights, but the third fight was ESPN. But they cooperated on that fight 2 times. And yeah, that's a very, very true statement. He said, look, you got Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. The PBC worked and partnered to try to get that fight done. And, they're saying that fight is done. Now, as far as that fight goes, I'm still holding my breath on that as it relates to what Oscar De La Hoya is doing. But as far as what they're saying and the PBC's involvement and willingness to do it, I think that I agree with Derrick James. I think that is something they would do. And so, as far as what's going to take place and whether or not Errol is going to fight Terence next year, I just think that the man's standpoint on that stuff is valid, right? The hurdle with that is going to be is Terence Crawford and Terence Crawford's sense of his own worth and how much, whether or not he's going to be willing, to fight, in a scenario where not only he benefits from it, but the promoter and other fighters benefit from it as well. Also, is he, going to be, able to and willing to promote the fight and get out there and do the press releases, let people in the gym do the all accesses and do all the type of things that you need to try to sell a big fight of that magnitude. And I can only assume that when Derrick James mentions that, he's saying that because he didn't see him do that on the BLK Prime fight. And also, he'd had a reputation for not doing that when he was having other promotional events, like the one with Sean Porter on ESPN, where, for me, what really sticks out in my mind as an example of that was how Sean Porter was actually at a fight, basically falling asleep promoting a fight, and on ESPN, the network that Terence Crawford is, the home of Terence Crawford at the time, and Terence Crawford wasn't there to promote the fight with him, right? So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But he also said some real good things about, what Errol, would be willing to do against some other fighters, or what excites him at the very least as a trainer for other fights. So, hey, man, we'll see what happens. But anyway, just wanted to give you that little bit. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.